With every new Magic set created, there's a chance for a FOMO event of some single card in Magic the Gathering that causes the market to have a giant surge of sales. Now, what happens to that market afterwards? 3, 6, and 9 months? Where does it leave the players who bought at all time highs? Well, in today's video, we're going to discuss exactly that matter, as well as help you, the player, avoid some of these pitfalls while still enjoying the cards you're trying to get your hands on. When a Magic card that you just paid a lot of money for starts to lose value after you've bought it and the market has decided it's not worth that much, it's never a good feeling, but it definitely does feel like you're in some kind of stock market for the hobby we all enjoy. Well, let's try to avoid those losses whenever possible. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here. Thanks again for hanging out with me for another video today. And that's exactly what we're talking about, trying to make sure we don't lose too much money every time the market decides that this card is the new hot thing. And I don't know if you guys have noticed lately, it happened a lot this year. Now, when I looked at the market and you look at all the cards that have gone up and down, these recent surges do appear to correlate to a lot of new kind of tweaks in how Wizards of the Coast is putting their cards together, namely power creep. Cards that just look, they're a little too good almost, and they kind of connect with older cards, not always on the reserve list either, and it causes that market to bump up. Players take notice, and the market hits a new all-time high because everyone tries to buy the card at the same time. And of course, it's not just players. You got speculators, flippers, investors, stores, everyone under the sun trying to get a piece of that pie to make their quick money and get out before the market decides, which it usually does, that that card is not worth that much money. It happens all the time, guys. All right, now let's bump over here and take a look at this. The first card I want to share with you guys. Who remembers Underworld Dreams? Duskmorn, remember? Oh my goodness, that commander deck had this card going insane. 10 to 15 bucks. There's all these different reprints of this card, and all of them are around the $5 level. Only the original OG Legends has managed to maintain any real semblance of value, and that's because it already was kind of expensive. So when you look at the Underworld Dreams and you look at where this card went, some people made money in between that 10 and that 5. They made a lot of money because they bought a lot and sold a lot in a very tight time frame, flipping it over and over again and making as much money as they could. But you know what's funny? Other people bought 20, 30 copies and held on. They may have bought it on the way up at $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7. They bought it on the way up thinking, this is going to hit like 25 bucks. I can flip this bad boy. But the market changed course way too quickly. Again, take a look at the time frame. November 2024, it starts to take off. And somewhere toward the end of December, this was already waning and becoming a less interesting thing for people to think about and put their money into. But it's not the only card. When we jump over and you take a look at a card like Seeds of Innocence, well, this, of course, is related to Yurga, the Eater of All, and that came from Bloomburrow, where it could turn everything into like a food token. This thing can, of course, wipe everything out, and then you're going to draw all kinds of insane cards. Now, I look at Seeds of Innocence, and I recognize it for the great card it is. Way back in July, all the way through to August, this thing hit that, $20, $25 level. And now it's back down. It says here 10.30, but if you go looking on TCG Player, you're going to find it for $6, $7. You will find it cheaper depending on the copy you're going for. Now that leads us down that conversation of avoiding loss. This card, up until that point, was a $2 or $3 card. It was readily available to many players, but nobody bought it because nobody thought about it because it wasn't interesting enough. It wasn't cool enough. Many low-end reserve list cards that do have a purpose, not random ones that just got put on the reserve list for no reason, but there's lots of these cards that do function and have good uses inside Commander and other formats. Those are cards, when they're on the all-time lows, you should have been buying. You should have been looking at them like a stock market, looking for a good deal before it became the next hot thing, because we understand how Wizards of the Coast as a company works. They're not really looking at the reserve list. They're not looking at a lot of these cards and how they'll interconnect with older cards, because Commander's a casual format. They like to keep their cards into Modern. They like to look at Standard. Everything else is kind of a secondary, tertiary look at what the market is going to do later on. Now, when we're looking at other cards, things that happened this year, when you look back here in 2023, look at the spike that Soldevi Digger went through. Now, this card is a very simple card, great artwork by M.E. Weber. It's a 2 casting cost. Put the top card of your library on the bottom of your top card of your graveyard on the bottom of your library. Sorry, the text is pretty small here. I'm not really looking at it that way. But when you look at that as a screen and you say that's the card, that's kind of boring, doesn't do much. But when River Song, the Doctor Who card, came out, where it said you draw from the bottom of your library, well, that means the top card of your graveyard with that card becomes the bottom. So you can draw an infinite loop of all kinds of crazy cards. Not very expensive though, is it? Because if you look at the card, it went from $15 back down to $2. But who's talking about it? Who's buying it now? Nobody. The sales, 5, 6 sales a week. Nothing crazy going on in TCG Player. Most other markets I deal with aren't selling any copies at all. Maybe 1 or 2 in a month. There's not enough interest there because it was a hot minute and now it's not. Right? Same thing we saw with Duskmourn. That was a hot commander deck. I'm not saying it's not being utilized. I'm saying nobody's talking about it. Nobody's trying to build it now. Everyone's forgotten about it. All the speculators dove out of the market, so nobody's looking. Nobody. So where does that leave the market now? Where does that leave us with? Well, it means somebody bought that card at $15 for a Soldevi Digger. Now it's back down to $2. And they lost like 90% of the value of that card if they sold it at that high. And a lot of players did sell on the way down. And that's just the way it's going to be. They got it while they could. They traded in. Maybe they got some kind of trading value from a store. There were a lot of people who lost money. But right now, when the market's doing nothing, again, not just reserve list cards, but it's doing nothing, and these cards aren't being noticed, but nobody's buying because nobody cares. But this is the time to buy. This is the time to pick up 4 copies for $8 because that's still half the cost, right? If you're looking at it that way. But if it's not a card you're interested in, if it's not a card you're going to play with, you don't care and you don't look at it. You just move on. But then you grump and you groan later on saying, oh, I should have bought this card. I know that feeling well. Now, take a look at a card like Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. When you see this card going across your screen and you see going back to 2023, it's like a $10 card. This is one of those ones that has, people use it. It's okay. People are hoping that the rest of this, product line comes along. And they hope that the rest of this mana base are created at some point. The other one being Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. And again, it loses and gains little tiny bits of value, but it holds very well. So you look at the Yavimaya. Now, when you look at that card, as a newer card, it's going to get reprinted. It already has been reprinted. Look at this. We have Fangorn Forest. Remember? This is like the commander deck one, right? Beautiful, beautiful card. This is the one that a lot of players are buying. This thing sells 15, 20 copies a week, all the time, because it falls in with Lord of the Rings. It hits a certain nostalgic point for a lot of players, Fangorn Forest, and it's still the Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. This one is going to be the rarer copy. If the land cycle ever gets completed, this will become the expensive one, because this is the one with unique artwork. Just like we saw with the Lord of the Rings, I think they did the Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth as the Dead Marshes or whatever. Same thing. It is going to be unique. It is going to be singular in its artwork form. It's going to be very expensive. Most players aren't looking at it, but there are 15, 20 players looking at the Fangorn Forest. Whereas Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, it sells a few copies, but nothing goes on. If another card gets built in that mana base, that card goes to $20 overnight. The interest will be peaked. So which players are going to be ready and poised to strike on something like that? Now, if you're just a player playing with the card, you're not going to care about anything I'm saying. You just want to play with it. That's fine, but I'm trying to save you money. I'm telling you, buy it now while it's cheap. If you ever plan on using it later on, save yourself the grief, the grumping, the groaning, because you didn't buy it when you should have. Oh, I remember that was like $8. I should have grabbed that card. How many people say that about hundreds of Magic cards over their lifetime of cards they should have bought? Oh, I should have. That was a good deal. Those reserveless cards were really cheap. Oh, I should have recognized that it was going to get reprinted, and I should have traded in, and now I could have gotten some value and bought it back cheaper and saved a few bucks. Exactly. This hobby is expensive. You got to look for the dips, the highs, the lows, wherever you can cut a corner and get in and save yourself a few bucks in the future is something that players need to be aware of. Even if you're not always actively looking like I would be, you've got to be at least aware of it. So if you go and see a good deal, you can say, you know what? That was a really big hit a couple of years ago. There's other things that will work with this. I may grab it. Because if you took a look at Unfulfilled Desires when it spiked more than once. I talked about it in yesterday's video. It's already winding down its interest. The interest seems to be a 4 or 5 day period. It's a spike. 48 to 72 hours, and it starts meandering down. All the sales have happened. But somewhere, before that card ever spiked, people accumulated positions. Somebody out there had 100 copies that they put up on TCG Player and sold them for 26, 30 bucks each. If they sold 10, 15, 20 copies and they made 30 bucks on a $2 card, they made a lot of money. And they can take part of that profit. They can sit in the back, not tell you, shh, wait for the price to go down in 8, 6, 12, 13 months from now and rebuy all those cards back onto the market. Rebuy for the next batch. They're still ahead. They got like 5, 6, 7 copies for the same price they sold one to you for, and they're ready for the next round. Most people never will be. Most people won't be aware. And on this channel, I try to warn you guys against this. I try to recommend cards when they're cheap and make you look at this stuff and say, what decks are you building? What ideas do you have? How can you forward your idea and your plan while saving money for the future? Which is why I say buy 4 of something and you never have to buy it again. If you're looking for your first dual land, you know you're buying that for your lifetime. It's never getting sold nowadays. They're too expensive. They're too hard to replace. Just buy it and be done. Buy near mint if you want to flip it. Buy a beat up copy if you're going to play with it. Save yourself some money. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the hobby. But don't fall into the loop of the hype wheel. It goes up, it goes down. It goes up, it goes down. Just buy it when it's down. Buy some extra copies and never think about it again because you got your play set. What do they say? A play set has 4 and 5 for commander, just in case. Why not? Save yourselves. Guys, I want to thank you again for hanging out with me today. This is just food for thought because it happens over and over again. And 2024 was a brutal year for a lot of these cards to go up and down and so many cards surging. And a player like me who already owns a couple stacks of this stuff, like, oh, I got like 4, 5, 10, 12 of this. I didn't have to worry. And for the patrons who asked for these cards, you know, I shipped it. You were fine way back in January of 2024 for some of these cards I had extra. It was no problem. And for those who are patrons of the channel now, you know what I'm doing. I'm building the positions. It will be fine for us in the future. That's the plan. Thanks again, guys, for hanging out. Thanks for being here on the channel. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget, well, you know, yada, yada, subscribe, like, and I'm here every day. Okay? Have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow. Well, you're back again. You're here, my friend, and you're ready to party! Nah, it's just the end credits for all the awesome people who support my channel. That's right, guys, the patrons. If you're not a patron, maybe you're a YouTube membership member. Maybe you're in the background lurking, wondering what goes on that private Discord. What goes on in that Patreon board. Don't worry. One day there might be a slot for you. Either way, enjoy. Thanks again, patrons. Thanks again. See you tomorrow. Welcome back to the Ramble Jamble. Coffee's in hand. Ramble in the Jamble! Sorry. Sometimes that just comes out. Got the demon in me there. Got some interesting emails about people who bought and sold highs and lows. Didn't do well, got caught with some cards in hand, and you know, we're wondering if I wanted to buy, and of course I'm saying I'm not buying at the high. That's not going to happen. I buy at the low, and I'm not there to bail out that way. I'm here to support the people on this channel as best I can. So I look at this and I say, this happens all the time. It's time to have that conversation again. We had it a lot this year. A lot of these random cards spiked up, and some cards really didn't move at all. Cards like Yavimaya Cradle kind of kept that steady pace, right? But this is the time to look for some of those rarer versions because things will spike if things come around. Never take your eyes off those Lord of the Rings cards. Until they give us a reason to think they're reprinting them, it's an item you got to think about. Yes, I own some of these cards, and yes, I love them inside some of my commander decks. It's too nostalgic for even the Moxman to pass up on. Can't help myself! And hopefully this video did help a few people. I know in the past some of this stuff has helped you guys, and I hope it continues to do so. The idea of overpaying bothers me to no end. We know that there is a cycle to these cards. 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. These cards go down, go down, go down until there's another reason for it to go up. So when it goes down, hopefully I mention it at the right time where we can get them, or I buy some for the channel ahead of time. So if it spikes up again, we can just send them out. All right, guys. Thanks again. Thanks for hanging out. I'm pulling up my socks. I'm going to make some dinner for the family. I'm going to finish this awesome coffee, like half full, quarter full. That's like a quarter full, but that's okay. That's okay. It's coffee. I mean, it's always good. Ramble, jamble. I'll see you tomorrow. Don't worry. I'll be there. You be there. Kids, clean your room. Just send your kids to clean the room. Do yourself a favor. Maybe it's not a favor. Maybe they do a worse job. Then you have to go and clean up after their cleanup. Like they shove it all in the closet and you're like, oh, why did you push it all into the closet instead of sorting it out? Don't you know how to fold socks? I know. I'm projecting, Mini Mox.